Breaking news, Viking Nation. The first revelation is about to detonate inside US Bank Stadium, and you're not ready for what just hit Minneapolis. 5 massive shockwaves are ripping through the purple and gold empire right now, and each one could redefine the future of this franchise forever. A star left tackle is making his triumphant return from a devastating injury that crushed last season's dreams. A rookie quarterback sensation faces a nightmare scenario that's eerily similar to other fallen first-round picks. A general manager's master draft strategy just took a brutal blow thanks to forces completely beyond his control. The development timeline for the team's future franchise quarterback is looking more terrifying by the day, and a cascade of injuries is threatening to derail what was supposed to be a championship run. But hold on tight, because what's coming next will shake the very foundation of everything you thought you knew about this 2025 season. If you bleed purple more than you hate the Packers, smash that subscribe button right now, and let's dive into the chaos that's consuming the North. But hold on. As shocking as that revelation about our offensive line savior is, the next update cuts even deeper into the heart of this franchise. We're talking about the man who was supposed to lead us to the promised land, the rookie who had Viking Nation believing in miracles after that fourth-quarter explosion against Chicago. J.J. McCarthy is still trapped in a walking boot, and the nightmare scenario that every purple-blooded fan has been dreading is becoming our harsh reality. The 22-year-old sensation who threw 2 touchdown passes and ran for another in that magical comeback against the Bears is now facing a 2 to 4 week absence that could stretch even longer. And here's the part that should terrify every Viking fan to their core. He's already projected to miss 21 of his first 23 games in the NFL. Think about that for a second. 21 out of 23 games. That's not development, that's disaster. Head coach Kevin O'Connell tried to put a positive spin on the situation, saying McCarthy was able to stand next to him during practice while calling plays to Carson Wentz. But let's be brutally honest here. Standing on the sideline in a walking boot isn't the same as taking snaps under pressure from NFL pass rushers. The ankle sprain he suffered against Atlanta wasn't just a minor setback, it was another chapter in what's becoming a terrifying pattern of unavailability. ESPN's Kevin Seifert dropped the hammer with some devastating context that should make every Viking fan's blood run cold. McCarthy threw only 713 passes in his entire college career at Michigan, roughly half the average of the other 5 quarterbacks selected in the first round of the 2024 draft. We're talking about a quarterback who needs every single rep he can get, and instead he's watching from the sideline while his development window slams shut. Remember Trey Lance? The 49ers' 3rd overall pick in 2021, who threw just 318 passes at North Dakota State? He's been on 3 teams and started only 5 games in the NFL. Anthony Richardson? He threw 393 passes at Florida before Indianapolis took him 4th overall in 2023, and now he's backing up Daniel Jones. Are we watching the same tragic story unfold in purple and gold? The walking boot that O'Connell dismissed as a precaution might as well be a symbol of everything that's going wrong with this franchise's quarterback development plan. McCarthy was supposed to be the answer, the leader who would bring us back to championship glory. But how can you lead when you can't even stay on the field? Carson Wentz will start against Cincinnati, with undrafted rookie Max Brosmer as the backup and newly signed Desmond Ridder as the emergency option. If that quarterback depth chart doesn't make you nervous, you're not paying attention. The Vikings have gone from believing they had found their franchise quarterback to wondering if they're about to witness another cautionary tale about rushing injured rookies back too soon. Do you still believe in McCarthy's future after seeing this pattern of injuries? Can a quarterback truly develop when he's spending more time in walking boots than in the pocket? The clock is ticking, Viking Nation, and every game McCarthy misses is another step toward the nightmare scenario we all desperately want to avoid. And just when fans thought the quarterback situation couldn't get more complicated, here comes the next bombshell that strikes at the very foundation of how this franchise builds for the future. General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah thought he had executed a masterstroke of draft strategy, accumulating an impressive 11 picks for the 2026 NFL Draft through a series of calculated moves and compensatory formula magic. The plan was brilliant on paper. Trade away players like Harrison Phillips, Sam Howell, and Mackie Blackman to stockpile future assets. Then watch as former Vikings players signed elsewhere would generate compensatory picks based on their new contracts and playing time. Adolfo Mensah had projected picks spread across multiple rounds, including a juicy fourth-round compensatory selection that was supposed to come from Cam Robinson's massive $12.5 million one-year deal with the Houston Texans. But here's where the beautiful plan crashes into the brutal reality of NFL politics and performance. Robinson got benched after just one game. The offensive tackle, who was supposed to be Houston's answer at left tackle, didn't play a single offensive snap on Monday night, and that catastrophic development just nuked the Vikings' compensatory pick projection. The compensatory formula is merciless in its calculations, factoring in salary per average annual value, percent of snaps taken, and postseason awards. Robinson was tracking toward that valuable fourth-round pick, but his sudden benching could drop that compensation all the way down to a fifth, sixth, or even seventh-round selection. Think about what that means in practical terms. The Vikings gave up a fourth-round pick last season to acquire starting-caliber help when Christian Darrisaw went down, and this compensatory pick was supposed to replace that exact asset. Now they're staring at the possibility of getting a late-round lottery ticket instead of a legitimate building block for the future. Adolfo Mensah's draft strategy was supposed to be the foundation for sustained success, a way to continuously reload with young talent while managing the salary cap like a financial wizard. But NFL general managers can't control what happens after players leave their building, and Robinson's failure in Houston just proved that even the most carefully crafted plans can explode without warning. The projected 11 picks for 2026 now look more like 10 picks with significantly less value, and every Vikings fan should be asking the same uncomfortable question: how many other former players might underperform and torpedo additional compensatory picks? Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold are also supposed to generate compensatory selections. But what happens if they struggle or get benched like Robinson? This isn't just about losing one draft pick. It's about the fragility of a strategy that depends on factors completely outside the organization's control. Are you confident in Adolfo Mensah's long-term vision when external forces can derail his master plans so easily? How many more compensatory disasters are waiting to ambush this franchise's future? Stay with me, because what comes next will flip the script in ways nobody predicted, and it cuts straight to the heart of why McCarthy's extended absence should terrify every purple-blooded fan who dreams of championship glory. The development crisis facing our rookie quarterback isn't just about missing a few games. It's about the fundamental reality that J.J. McCarthy entered the NFL with less throwing experience than almost any first-round quarterback in recent memory, and now he's losing precious development time that he literally cannot afford to lose. ESPN's Kevin Seifert laid out the devastating numbers that should make every Viking fan's stomach drop. McCarthy's 713 career pass attempts at Michigan represent roughly half the experience of other first-round quarterbacks from his draft class. And when you combine that limited college background with his current injury pattern, you're looking at a development disaster that could define the next decade of Vikings football. The comparison to Trey Lance isn't just unfair, it's prophetic. Lance threw 318 passes at North Dakota State, got drafted third overall by San Francisco, and has been a journeyman backup ever since. Anthony Richardson threw 393 passes at Florida, went fourth to Indianapolis, and is now riding the bench behind Daniel Jones. McCarthy's 713 attempts put him ahead of those cautionary tales, but not by enough to provide comfort when you factor in his injury history. Here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. Quarterbacks need reps to develop, and McCarthy is losing those reps at the worst possible time in his career. The first two seasons are when young quarterbacks either establish themselves as franchise cornerstones or begin the slow slide toward irrelevance. And McCarthy has already missed most of his rookie year with a torn meniscus and now faces another extended absence with this ankle injury. The walking boot that Kevin O'Connell dismissed as a precaution might as well be a symbol of this franchise's quarterback development crisis. How can you learn to read NFL defenses when you're not facing them? How can you develop pocket presence when you're standing on the sideline? How can you build chemistry with your receivers when Carson Wentz is taking all the meaningful snaps? The Vikings invested the 10th overall pick in McCarthy because they believed he could be their franchise quarterback. But franchise quarterbacks need to be on the field to justify that investment. Every game he misses is another opportunity for doubt to creep into the minds of coaches, teammates, and fans. Every week in a walking boot is another step toward the nightmare scenario where a promising rookie becomes another cautionary tale about the importance of staying healthy in the NFL. The comparison to successful quarterbacks is even more damning. Josh Allen threw 649 passes at Wyoming and needed time to develop, but he stayed healthy enough to get those crucial early career reps. Lamar Jackson threw 655 passes at Louisville and immediately showed his unique skills at the NFL level. McCarthy's 713 attempts should have been enough if he could stay on the field, but availability is the most important ability in professional football. Do you believe McCarthy can overcome this development deficit if he keeps missing time with injuries? Can the Vikings afford to wait for a quarterback who might never stay healthy long enough to reach his potential? The clock is ticking, and every day in that walking boot brings us closer to answers that Viking Nation might not want to hear. But the night isn't over, because the final revelation is pure medical chaos, and it's heading straight for our Week 3 showdown against Cincinnati, where the injury report reads like a casualty list from a battlefield. Christian Darrisaw returned to full practice participation on Friday and is listed as questionable for Sunday's game against the Bengals. But that questionable designation tells the entire story of this franchise's precarious position heading into a crucial divisional matchup. The left tackle, who was supposed to be the cornerstone of our offensive line protection, has been out for the first 2 weeks as he continues recovering from last year's torn ACL. And while his return to full practice sounds encouraging, questionable means exactly that. We won't know if our quarterback protection will be intact until game day. But Darrisaw's uncertain status is just the beginning of this medical nightmare. The Vikings have ruled out center and Ryan Kelly with a concussion, quarterback J.J. McCarthy with that devastating ankle injury, and offensive tackle Justin Skule with another concussion. Kelly and Skule had limited practice time Friday, but couldn't clear the league's concussion protocol, which means our offensive line depth is hanging by a thread against a Bengals pass rush that's hungry for quarterback blood. Think about the domino effect here. If Darrisaw can't go, Walter Rouse will likely get the start at left tackle, and with Skule already ruled out, the Vikings are looking at a patchwork offensive line trying to protect Carson Wentz in his first start as a Viking. Wentz hasn't had meaningful playing time in months. He's still learning Kevin O'Connell's system, and now he might be standing behind an offensive line that's missing multiple key pieces. The questionable list keeps growing with linebacker Austin Keys dealing with a groin injury, safety, Harrison Smith battling an illness, and linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel in concussion protocol. Van Ginkel was a full participant Friday, which provides some hope, but Keys and Smith were limited. And when you're talking about a 35-year-old safety like Harrison Smith dealing with any kind of health issue, every Viking fan should be holding their breath. The only positive news comes from edge rusher Jonathan Greenard, who returned to full participation Friday after dealing with an oblique injury and doesn't carry an injury designation into Sunday's game. But one healthy pass rusher can't mask the reality that this team is held together with medical tape and prayers heading into a game they absolutely must win to avoid falling to 1-2 and facing serious questions about their playoff aspirations. Remember how this season was supposed to unfold. McCarthy was going to build on his incredible fourth-quarter performance against Chicago. Darrisaw was going to anchor an improved offensive line, and the Vikings were going to compete for the NFC North Championship. Instead, we're staring at an injury report that looks like a MASH unit and wondering if we have enough healthy players to field a competitive team against Cincinnati. The Bengals are coming to Minneapolis with their own championship aspirations, and they're going to see this injury report as an opportunity to steal a road victory against a wounded Vikings team. Joe Burrow is going to look at our questionable secondary and start licking his chops. and their defensive coordinator is probably already game planning ways to exploit our potentially compromised offensive line. Do you trust Carson Wentz to lead this team to victory with so many question marks surrounding him? Can this defense hold up if Harrison Smith can't go and Van Ginkel is still dealing with concussion symptoms? The answers to those questions will define not just Sunday's game, but potentially the entire trajectory of this season. Because if the Vikings fall to 1-2 with their star quarterback sidelined and their offensive line in shambles, this dream season could turn into a nightmare faster than anyone imagined. And if this week felt like an earthquake, what's coming next could be the aftershock that topples the whole season, because the convergence of all these crises has created a perfect storm that could define the next decade of Vikings football. Think about what we've witnessed in just the first 2 weeks of what was supposed to be a championship campaign. Our franchise quarterback is trapped in a walking boot facing a development crisis that mirrors the cautionary tales of Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson. Our carefully constructed draft strategy just took a massive hit due to circumstances completely beyond our control. And our injury report reads like a medical emergency that threatens to derail everything Kevin O'Connell has built. The Christian Darrisaw situation perfectly encapsulates the fragility of this entire enterprise. Here's a Pro Bowl left tackle who was supposed to be the foundation of our offensive line, yet he's questionable for a crucial game because he's still recovering from an injury that ended his 2024 season. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz is preparing to start his first game as a Viking behind a potentially compromised offensive line, with backup options that include an undrafted rookie and a quarterback who was signed off the street just days ago. This isn't the championship foundation that Viking Nation was promised. It's a house of cards that's threatening to collapse under the weight of its own instability. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's master plan to accumulate draft capital is crumbling as former players like Cam Robinson get benched after one game, potentially costing the Vikings valuable compensatory picks that were supposed to fuel future championship runs. The irony is devastating. Adofo-Mensah thought he was playing chess while other general managers were playing checkers. But you can't control what happens after players leave your building, and Robinson's failure in Houston just proved that even the most sophisticated strategies can explode without warning. But here's what should terrify every purple-blooded fan more than any individual crisis. The pattern that's emerging suggests this franchise is built on a foundation of hope rather than certainty. Hope that McCarthy can stay healthy enough to develop into a franchise quarterback despite his limited college experience and injury history. Hope that Darrisaw can return to Pro Bowl form after a devastating knee injury. Hope that former players will perform well enough in their new cities to generate the compensatory picks that fuel Adofo-Mensah's long-term vision. Hope that Carson Wentz can recapture the magic that made him a Pro Bowl quarterback years ago. Championship teams aren't built on hope. They're built on proven commodities and reliable foundations. And right now, the Vikings look more like a collection of question marks than a legitimate title contender. The next few weeks will tell us everything we need to know about this franchise's true identity. Can McCarthy return from his ankle injury and prove he's capable of staying healthy enough to justify his draft position? Will Darrisaw look like the dominant left tackle he was before his ACL tear? Or will he be another cautionary tale about rushing back from major injuries? Can O'Connell's offensive system function with a veteran backup quarterback who's still learning the playbook? These aren't just football questions. They're existential questions about the direction of this entire organization. If you're still wearing purple and gold after everything we've discussed, prove it by smashing that like button and telling us in the comments whether you believe this team can overcome the perfect storm of injuries, development concerns, and strategic setbacks. Subscribe right now if you think Viking Nation deserves better than watching our championship dreams get derailed by circumstances beyond our control. Because if you thought this week was the peak of chaos, just wait until the rivals make their countermove and the real battle for the NFC North begins. The next 72 hours might be the most decisive in this franchise's recent history. And every decision made in that Minnesota locker room could determine whether we're celebrating a playoff run or mourning another season of unfulfilled potential. Stay tuned, Viking Nation, because the real avalanche is just starting, and what happens next will separate the true believers from the fair-weather fans who jump ship at the first sign of trouble.